Showtime! The Capital G show starts right now. What's up YouTube, Capital G here, talking about a recent trend that I noticed about 3 weeks ago. I was playing Shadows against a Qli player, and I've actually started seeing it more often over the last couple of weeks. I've actually been seeing it in Burning Abyss, and that is teching in a couple of copies of Swift Scarecrow into your main deck. And I'm going to talk about it, why it's happening, and why I think that it's a horrible thing for the game, or it's more or less a horrible sign of the game. All right, so we all know that traps are pretty much at an all-time low, which is ironic because, you know, cards like Heavy Storm and the OCGS Feather Duster, we have none of that, and yet people just don't seem to be playing traps. I mean, Teller Knights are pretty much the only deck where you're going to see the full gamut of traps. I mean, Teller Knights play counter traps, they play reactionary traps like Bottomless and Torrential, they play battle traps, they play traps that summon monsters. You get a mix of pretty much everything in that deck. But with Burning Abyss and Qli's, they've been cutting a lot of traps. In fact, a lot of times with Burning Abyss now, you'll see more enemy controllers, as, you know, Shadows kind of started to do last formats. Then you'll see traps, and maybe you'll see 1 or 2 copies of Fire Lake, but that's pretty much it. With Qli's, I would think the only staple trap right now is 100% Vanities, and, you know, even things like Soul Transition and Skill Drain, maybe you see them, maybe you won't. Most of the generic good traps like Bottomless and Evac aren't really played in Qli's anymore. And to me, I believe that players just don't have a lot of faith in traps anymore. I almost feel like the community as a whole feels like the mechanic of the trap has been power creeped. They feel like the game is so fast that setting a card, using a card that can only be, running a card that can only be activated after setting it, you know, the fact that it is vulnerable to spell and trap removal, it has to sit on the field for a turn, then activate, and so many of them are, you know, so many of them are reactive and they can't be proactive, that players feel like it's too much risk for, you know, the little bit of reward. And I mean, it's really unfortunate. Now, we have been seeing spell and trap removal go through the roof, despite the fact that we don't have the power cards. I mean, MST to me seems like a bona fide staple. And then you also take into consideration that Night Beam used to just be played in Qli's, and now Burning Abyss players are playing that. And then Qli players have also started picking up on Storm, because not only can it trigger sacrifice, but it can blow up their opponent's spell and trap removal at the same time. And Storm can get rid of 2 and 3 cards at a time. It's really, really a powerful card. So I think a lot of players are just, they're in a position where they kind of feel like they're at a crossroads. It's like, we can try and play traps, but a lot of times they just get blasted away, especially if you're going first and you have traps and you can't attack and your opponent has more spell and trap removal than you have traps. You know, you're in a really bad position. And since damage is through the roof, if you lose your traps, you know, you might not get another turn. You might end up getting OTK'd. So they've started migrating to this card, Swift Scarecrow. Now, it does make sense from the fact, if you compare it to things like Gores or Battle Fader, which in Qli's and Burning Abyss, those cards wouldn't be consistent. For Qli's, if they have any Qli card in their Pendulum Zone, I believe every single one of them says that you can't summon a Qli, or you can't summon any monsters, excuse me, you can't special summon any monsters but Qli's, so you wouldn't be able to summon those. And then with Burning Abyss, you know, you wouldn't want to have that monster sitting on board if your opponent like Fiendish Chains it or something, and then you can't summon your other Burning Abyss monsters. It would kind of slow you up potentially, even if it was something powerful like a Gores. So those aren't viable options. But I think it's a really sad state in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where players would basically say, I would rather try and OTK you or die trying than have to run traps. You know what I mean? That's what basically this format has come down to. Because when you look at a card like Swift Scarecrow and you're running it in Burning Abyss and, you know, Qli's, and I think it's going to end up making its way to Shadows, how desperate are we? You know what I mean? You look at this card, it has absolutely no synergy with those decks. It doesn't give them field presence. It's a -1. They get absolutely no benefit other than, I guess, technically not dying from running the card. Even with a deck like Shadows, I could possibly see you having some synergy with it, because at worst, you can use it for either L fusion or the regular fusion, and you can make Shikanaga. That's a viable, that's a viable play. But with Burning Abyss and Qli's, this card can never advance your game state. It just can't. If you're winning the game, Swift Scarecrow will never help you win the game more. You know, all it does is prevent you from potentially losing the game. And you guys probably saw that Qli video where OTK Central was using Threatening Roar, and I was like, the fuck? But it really seems that the game has gotten to the point where it is so fast that we need these blanket cards to make sure that you don't lose. I mean, Qli's, they are notoriously known for getting OTK'd by their own monster. They'll have a disc on board with a full pendulum zone and nothing else, and a Burning Abyss player will be like, tour guide, you know, go into Dante, detach graph, whatever I get from grass, enemy controller, take your guy, you know, attack game. You know what I mean? If you're not at full life, you're probably in the danger zone or you're getting gamed. So I want to know what you guys think of this. Me being a Satellar Knight player, I'm obviously not even going to think about this because some of the traps in this deck, obviously ones can protect your life points, but even the ones that summon can be used defensively, like Dragon Oasis. You can basically just get an Altair. Altair will get Deneb. You get another card from your hand, and now you have 2 chump blockers, both in defense mode, so you won't take any damage. But I wonder if this is one of those things where it's going to be one of those things where we're just going to be seeing this until the end of the format. And even if you look at Necros, they have Valkyris, right? And basically he's Swift Scarecrow for that deck. So even they're going to be pretty much doing it because we know historically ritual decks don't run traps because they have to run ritual monsters, ritual spells, and ways to get those ritual monsters and spells. So like they don't have space for traps ever. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching as always. Subscribing makes life happy.